Akshay, did you always knew what you wanted to do when you passed out from MBA?
I was all over the place. Saurabh, what about you?
यार मेरे को तो तब भी आइडिया नहीं था, आज भी आइडिया नहीं है.
Confused about your career choices? Wondering what steps to take next? In this podcast called Beyond Campus, Saurabh Garg, founder of C4E, and Akshay Datt, founder of Unnati, are on a mission to crack open the career success code for the youth. वो बचपन में कहते थे ना, तुम जो चाहे बन सकते हो. So, let's turn the dream into reality.
Hi, I'm Prithvijit. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of BRIDGEi2i Analytics Solutions.
I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, data is the new oil. And if data is the new oil, then data mining or data analytics is the new oil drilling business. Today, we're talking to Prithvijit, a data analytics professional who has founded BRIDGEi2i, which is among India's leading B2B data analytics platforms. Here's Jeet talking about his journey and his transition from a rising corporate career to becoming a founder and the struggles of starting up.
So, Prithvijit, or rather Jeet, as most people call you, first tell me, how did Prithvijit become Jeet?
Yeah, that's interesting. I come from Calcutta, so in that part of the India, you always have a nickname. So my nickname had been Jit, but when I came to work, again, I had the first call with an international client, and my then manager was trying to kind of pronounce my name. And after the call, he said, it's going to be tough with all these international talk about Prithvijit. So do you have any other name? So I said, yeah, people call me Jit also. So that's how I think Jit became popular, and that remains still.
So, tell me about growing up in Calcutta. What kind of family are you from? What memories do you have of those days?
Yeah, so this is again. So I've done my schooling as well, my college in Calcutta. But again, my father used to be running his own business, so he's kind of a self-made man. At that point of time, moved from a job to set up a business in interior decoration, which was very different. So I have seen ups and downs in that scenario, kind of a middle class background. My mother was a housewife. So again, my brother is a CA, so he is 8 years elder to me. He has been a kind of a role model always in terms of things, and also not to what to do, but also what not to do. Like when he studied
Okay.
CA, I realized, CA is not my cup of tea. So, so those are some of the learnings. So that's where I spent a good part of the formative years in Kolkata. Before I again went to Delhi to study in ISI to do a master's in quantitative economics. But till that point of time, school and college was in Kolkata.
And seeing your father, did you have that early ambition to do something entrepreneurial, or were you more interested in a stable career with good growth? Like, was that the goal?
So that's interesting because so we had an option to stay on the family business. I think both my brother and I, at that point of time, we kind of thought we don't want to be in it. So because I think my father actually wind it up because in some form because it was again a private limited kind of a proprietorship business that he was into. So at that point of time, seeing the ups and downs and seeing also the kind of studies and everything, that was not necessarily an attractive option. But having said that, deep in my mind, probably this whole the fun of setting something up, doing being on your own, that had been there. So, but may not be in the same field, but not something that in mind what I'm doing today. So it was probably, yes, maybe at some point of time trying to do something which probably builds up over time. It's almost like creating an enterprise thinking had been there, but I won't say that that was the only ambition I had. Neither am I that ambitious also saying that I had a view 10 years down the line I want to do this. I was probably not of that kind.
Yeah, okay. So, why statistics? Like, why did you do your masters in ISI?
So that's a good one. I think so. I studied economics in my graduation from Kolkata St. Xavier's College. The choice at that point of time was to think of doing an MBA or again study further in economics. So actually, I didn't study statistics in the sense. So what I actually did my master's was a MS in quantitative economics from ISI kind of a thing. So MBA I gave. But those are also periods again hadn't thought through, neither planned whatever had happened. I hadn't got through MBA. So there, and that's the point of time I got a little serious, saying that I have to be serious about doing something in a master's degree only. So that's where I applied for JNU, Delhi School of Economics, and ISI was also starting this at that point of time. So that I think I was lucky to get into all three of them, but then picked up ISI. So not that it was a very structured thinking, but again, math, stats, and economics were areas I enjoyed in terms of studying very practical areas. So it was a good thing again, and I think ISI also came with that brand. So that's where I kind of stepped into ISI.
And did it offer campus placements like when you finished the course?
So I graduated in 98. So there used to be placements, but ISI is a little different from the IIMs and others. The focus is to get people more into academics more than jobs. So having said that, what was common at that point of time, a lot of companies on more IT services or or market research would come. Those were the only jobs at that point of time from someone who's studying economic statistics and others. Otherwise, you get in to do your PhD and others. But there were a few jobs. So somehow the IT jobs I didn't click it. It didn't, again, a period where it didn't go through. So there were one or two more corporate-ish jobs, which again also did not happen. So I actually ended up one of the very few people in the campus. The group was also small, only 15, 16 people or so. So thinking to maybe do a PhD or maybe again take up more like a semi-academic option and see how it builds up. So I had actually a period. So I joined National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. So that's where I worked for 1 year or so. So you can call it a campus placement, but it was not really core. Neither was it core academics, nor was it more corporate. So it was somewhere in between. So at that point of time, I met my wife also at that point of time. She was a classmate of mine in ISI and others. So we were thinking of getting to the same city, getting married at some point of time. So PhD was not an option in that scenario. So that's where I think there was that period of 1 year was really very tough, but also taught me a lot to be serious in life. Because I remember those were the times where you would have shared computers, where you go in and sit down and try to write down your applications, but it will not go on email, but you have to post your job application. So there was a period I would have applied to 100 places or so, would have given 30, 40 interviews, but nothing was kind of converting into what I would call a well-paying corporate job. But then it happened. I think then GE happened at a period of time, but the first 1 year was not really a cushy a placement kind of a thing. So that was not for me.
Hmm. Okay. And what role did GE hire you for?
So GE at that point of time was just setting up their analytics. So it was a very new space at that time. So they were setting up an analytics center in India, where they were. This was part of their credit card division. Where they were trying to kind of see if the people with a quantitative background could kind of do a lot of their analysis or so from India for their US business. So they set this up in Bangalore. Honestly, when the interview happened, I had no clue what this space is all about. So they talked about saying that they're into card modeling. So what they meant was credit card uh, data modeling kind of a thing for a for some time I heard this company G talking about car modeling, and I had no clue what it's all about, honestly speaking, because the space was
Yeah.
really not. Yeah, I knew I've studied statistics, but only after you got into the job, the realization was, a lot of their marketing, risk management, and others, they want to do a lot more with data, learning from data. But that I learned after I got into GE. So, and that 1 year, as I was talking about, not being so serious, or learning the hard way. The GE period, I was very serious. So that learning was fantastic. So they were setting up in some form. It was really an industry getting created in GE. They were the first guys, and a little later, Amex set up a similar center. But they were just setting this up, and the whole fun that this could be done was new, because India never had a lot of data. So you would have market research, but you will not have analytics kind of thing. So this was a completely new concept at that point of time. So we saw it growing inside GE, and almost at the time the industry was forming. So was somewhere lucky to be one of the early members of that team, to be kind of be part of the GE engine who started analytics industry in India.
So, what is card modeling? Like for our listeners, can you tell us what you were doing at GE?
Yeah. So G, what they do is this is their consumer finance business. So they have a concept of this private label credit card. So essentially, they will fund retail chains like a Walmart or anyone else on the credit cards. Those chains will issue it to their end clients, whoever is visiting the stores. And although private level means it's a Walmart card, for example, but GE will finance that. So essentially, GE is taking all the risk of that business and making profit from it. So, and any usage of credit card, as we all know, is actually creating a lot of data, because you have to take a call how much they are spending, whether they are credit worthy. So, using a lot of that data, the decision used to happen whether to give someone a card or not. Are they going to return the money? Are they going to be profitable? Or even deciding if someone has a card, should we give them more money or more limit? So all of those are modeling really. So how do you use that data to make a lot of this marketing, risk management kind of decisions? So that's really card modeling.
Okay, okay. So this was like basically what we call as big data, right?
So the name has evolved quite a bit. I think initially it was called analytics. More so, then it became last 8 9 years back big data, because a lot of it was not just a volume of data, but a lot of concepts started being called as data, like image, video, all those are today data. So that's where it became data. So yes, it became big data. Now it's called more AI also. So the name gets changed, and obviously technology is also evolving. But you're right. That's the thing. And one interesting anecdote on that. So my first card, I mean the visiting card, used to carry a title called Assistant Manager Modeling, and honestly, I used to feel very shy showing that card to anyone. People would look at me and say, you modeling. So people had no clue in India at that point of time, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult to explain people what do I really work on.
Mm-hmm. And you got married by this time, like while you were at GE?
Yeah, so interestingly, we were trying to be in the same city. So we are classmates. So we were. So she was in Baroda. She had joined market research, and then she was working out of Calcutta. I was in Delhi. So we were trying to converge to a same city. So we ended up. I got a GE job, and interestingly, the same time she also was giving interviews. She also ended up in GE. So we ended up in the same company, not just the same city. So 6 years we have worked together in that sense, and kind of from a similar profession. And then the path became separate later, but I got married after 6 more months after joining GE or so.
Okay. So by the time you left GE, you were an AVP there, which I think is a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, so that way I was kind of lucky also there, because this thing was building up very nicely. So initially it was for the credit card. Then I got a nice charter to say that, and GE is a very diversified business. So build up a team for insurance. So got a very early experience of leadership or management. And then I think the whole the GE Capital Services Organization, which was called JECIS that point of time, that was also hived off by GE. So this our group became a part of that, which is now known as Genpact. So we were kind of also lucky to also look at not just in GE business, but start incubating this as a service for other companies. So that way it was a little early in terms of a variety of roles, but in a couple of years I became a manager. Another couple of years became a AVP or so. So that was a very interesting growth that way, almost incubating a business as a part of the leadership role within GE. In some form, the industry was also getting formed. So good growth within GE in that scenario.
Okay, okay. And why did you want to move on from GE?
Yes, so the G experience was very nice, and honestly, means even the thinking this is possible, and by that time, I think a little bit of the entrepreneurial bug was starting to bite a few of us. In fact, some of my co-founders, we really worked together in GE at that point of time as we were trying to take this as a commercial offering. But having said that, every time we were sitting down to do a plan, we were realizing, even our salaries will not be kind of paid for. And that time I used to think, yes, you can make salaries from day one. But I think so. So there was so yes, entrepreneurship at some point of time was mine, but a similar experience in a different setup was playing on. So that's where I think HP offered me a role where they were saying, you're the first guy, set this capability for HP completely from scratch, and that's where I got that role with HP. And also I think I always had this thought, this is a very technology play. So being in a company like HP might also give me a little different learning, and obviously building up your own team, setting up from scratch. So that was the attraction to move into HP in 2005 or so.
And what was your like KRA at HP? Like you were setting up an analytics kind of a team. This was for internal customers, or this was a service being offered to HP clients?
Yeah, so initially, when they hired me, they thought of both the options were open, and HP, unlike GE, were given GE was already doing a lot of analytics kind of work, given the financial services business and others. HP was just at very initial stages. Data was also not organized. So as soon as I joined in, a lot of focus went inside HP because all they're also a very diversified business, and very quickly we scaled up I think in 2 to 3 years time we scaled up 1,000 member team, which was just supporting internal HP businesses globally. So which I think at that point of time for HP that became a bigger play, although we were starting to think a little bit on commercializing this, but the management was more insistent and kind of thinking of, this is a big asset for us. So although you might commercialize, but a bigger play might be to get HP to yield the value of doing analytics. So I think so. A lot of focus went inside HP in setting that practice up completely.
And what were like the kind of problem statements that you were solving?
Yeah, so HP again. So if you see, they are into different business models. On one hand, obviously they are known for printers and personal computers, which they would sell through a channel like a retailer or so, or they would sell it online on their own .com. So they were starting to do that also. They by the time I left, they had a fairly large online business also in US. While I think HP being diversified, they again had a separate business into servers and storage, which was not to a consumer line, was more what enterprises will buy, and then services and others. So again, just like GE, the diversification was very high in the type of businesses, and all of them would realize, there is a play of data. To enhance marketing effectiveness in terms of how do I ensure a conversion happens on my online sale? How do I know what pricing will work in a, say, a retailer? How do I enable my sales guys to kind of use data to drive more leads or more conversion? How do I look at there's no fraud happening on pricing on say a student laptop being given, but that is instead of students, others are actually taking it. So a lot of use cases across the board around marketing, sales, supply chain management, HR, and others, which became really using data to drive forward-looking decisions. So that was really the what was building up inside HP for all the businesses and regions globally.
Okay. Okay. And this is where you finally like bit the bullet to become an entrepreneur. So tell me about that journey, like taking the decision to quit a well-paying job and starting on your own.
Yeah, so two three things which goes into it. So again, I think by that time, I think three of the now the founder team, Ashish, Pritham, and me, were discussing quite a bit. In fact, we did one more business plan in that meantime, and then
You were all in HP together, or
no,
like?
so Pritham and I continued to be in HP, although all three of us had worked together in GE. Ashish continued to be in GE, while two of us stepped out, and then we realized, this is there is a inertia because you just if one person doesn't step out of something, it just will not happen because you are used to it. It's a cushy job. It's doing well, so it's very difficult to do it. And in some form, I think I was reaching a stage where as you were saying initially, I was getting excited. There's a large commercial opportunity, and HP was kind of thinking, is that their core to take it commercially, and also to some extent sitting out of India, thinking about a global business in a very large entity is a difficult thinking. So my thinking was, somewhere you probably either take another job in HP and continue, or whatever I have picked up over the last 10 years or so, step out, do this again. This might be a business on its own. Having said that, I think finally I had made up my mind, but stepping out was very difficult because there's no way three people can come together, was what my thinking. So the choice was, continue in this or just leave it. So at one fine day in some form, and there are some funny anecdotes to it. I was again in some role, was being asked to go to US for a month during the 2011 World Cup time, and I had made up my mind. I want to leave. Why? And somehow the Cricket World Cup has been something I had followed always, and I said, "There's no way I'm going to. If I'm going to leave, why do I sacrifice the World Cup also?" So I remember talking to my wife one evening and saying, I'm going to leave. She said, you keep on talking about it, but you never do it. So that was my time to just tell her and say, you know the consequences, right? There might be a situation. And luckily, my wife, or rather to be all the founders' wife, had been also doing very well in their jobs and others, which was really a cushion which existed. But so she said, "It's okay. What's so okay? Means if you leave, that's fine." So I actually, without talking to others, next day went and put in my papers. So so that I think triggered, and then I spoke to Ashish Pritam again, saying, I'm doing it right now, and they also said yes. So I think that trigger helped. So in a month or two, we just got together as a team. So that's how it all started. It's not that this time we had a business plan, honestly. So we just said, let's do a formation, and people started coming in. That's how it formed finally in 2011.
Okay. And from the time you quit till the time you saw the first rupee of revenue, like tell me about that journey.
Yeah, uh, that's not that's not an easy journey. I think obviously any first of that takes a lot of time. It's easy to form a company. Then I think the team was starting to come together, which itself is a few months. Although I think what happened at that point of time, we realized if we have to do this, we first need the company, but then we need a space to operate. In fact, we kind of looked into a few things. We picked up a garage in HSL layout, and taking a garage, there is some influence of HP. Actually, HP started in a garage. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
where we
That's
got
true.
very excited. And we
Uh,
realized after a point, this had its own issues. Like our phones were not working inside the garage because we had basement garage and all those. But took a space, again, took a phone to see if there are inbound calls. There were little places we were telling things, but business was not necessarily coming in. So we got one small assignment. Again, both were two assignments actually. One is someone who have worked, one of my earlier bosses who said, you know, you're getting in, help me a little bit into something. So it was like a project which was actually very valuable to actually get some money coming in. And other is, I think, someone had published, you know, an HP veteran has left to start on business. So IT services company who was trying to solve an analytics problem reached out to us. You know, we have a project, we are not able to solve it. Can you guys do it? So it was a very small. So the first year revenue, that was actually the year we did not really. That was a year of losses because it was. So we did couple of projects, but both were not too tangible to say, you know, it's a business thing. So what we did is couple of us just then left the country and said, let's just book a flight, go to US, and there start talking to potential people we know, start having some discussions through references and others. We kept on talking to a lot of people, and I think that trip, so there is two consecutive trips we did. One was a few weeks. There was a second trip we did in a 4 weeks or 5 weeks. We went to some 25 cities in US. So all over the place, going and talking to people, and we behaved as if, you know, we are a fairly large company. We have some thoughts and others. This not to lie anything, but being very confident, saying that, you know, we can do
but
something for you.
at that time, it was just the three of you.
Yes, the three, and I actually couple of people volunteered who we knew, who said if we're starting, we will also want to come in as employees in the company. So some of the initial people we were lucky because they knew us and in some form who also wanted to be a part of this, who also joined in and who still are kind of key people in the company. So we in fact we made two offers in a single day in two coffee shops in HSL layout, talking to two of them. But they were the first two employees. So we were around a 5-6 member team by the end of that year. Although there was hardly any revenue, so that's where and then a couple of the founders were traveling mostly to figure out how to get business. So then I think somewhere I think a couple of companies started giving slightly larger projects, so which is where the real game started off.
Did you already have a network in the US? Like, just landing up for someone, I mean, for someone like me, even if I'm offering a service which I can sell in the US, I can't imagine how I would make it work. Like, how did you get the doors opened and meet people, and how did that conversion happen from the US?
Yes, so having worked into large enterprises for a decade, obviously, and most of our work in the past has been with US, so that way we had known people, but it's a very different thing knowing people with the brand name of HPG versus knowing people without a brand name. So having having have ability to talk and others, so that helped knowing people so to do conversation, and some of them honestly trusted. But more people would think, you know, these guys are between jobs. Let's spend some time, but so people were talking, but being convinced this is going to stay, it was a difficult thing. But at that stage, I think you just have to talk, and honestly it was the most difficult thing to do, because before that is in US, for example, you it means in HP, I would go by and take a cab every time. But now you can't afford a cab, so you have to rent a car. You're not driven in the US earlier. So that itself, it's a change. You're going in for the first time to kind of go to office, rent a car, drive in from the airport, talk through. But thankfully, technology played a little bit, because I think by this time, a couple of these technologies were starting to come in. I think one is LinkedIn. because you are able to identify certain people who might matter for you, being able to reach out, and some doors open through either through references or talking to. They were open to talking. So that's one. Second is you don't necessarily have to be local. Means it's not that means typically you would attribute sales to local presence, but by this time you could start using your GPS and a little later Google Maps to land up anywhere without knowing the city at all. So those were two things. I think there was a huge inertia, but I think we overcame. We had no other choice. In fact, I remember still the second trip. Pritham fell sick in between the trips. So it's like 20 cities or so you're covering, and through the trip he was very unwell. I think had I been in his place, I would have come back home. So in fact, he went through a process and others. But he said, I'm not going back because if I go back, it's like a defeat, and I will not be again come back and do this. And he actually continued through that process, which was, I think, some of those things actually make you more and more confident. If you try, it will happen, and it's a matter of trying it in a structured way and doing it. So a lot of it, yes, we knew a few people, but I think the businesses we got over a period of time, some initial referrals help, but also some new people we have met, talked, convinced them, and I think US is very open in this thing. Honestly speaking, I think other geographies take a lot more time, think about the brand, but US is open to do some experimentation in a small ticket and others, which was the way we started off.
Okay, okay, okay. And why did you call the company BRIDGEi2i? Like, what was the story behind the name?
Yeah, so I think it also right now also it fits very well on what we do. At that time, the thinking was, we there is a huge opportunity to partner with enterprises in their journey from what we call as information to insight to impact. So information is all about organizing the data that they have. Insight is really mining that data to see what patterns, what trends, what changes, which is now a lot of statistical modeling, machine learning kind of thing. And impact is about, okay, from this learning, put something back into the system and help businesses kind of get a larger top line or bottom line. So that was the thinking at that time. And I think that continued to be the single thread, which is still today very valid. I think those are also our core capabilities and others. So we somehow thought through, I think, although with this three I's, information inside, we had some variations of names. So we had sent, I remember, five names when we were doing the company formation. For I think the fifth name got picked up, which I think okay, which worked out for us finally.
Hmm. Okay, okay. And around this time, you also had other Indian companies into similar analytics kind of services. Like Musicma was also very much active at this time.
Yep.
So, like, how were you? Like, were they like a significant threat to you, or a significant competitor to you, or was the market so big that there was enough space for everybody? And
Yeah, I think even today, I think the space is still very early stages and scratching. Although I think Musicma especially was a very good example that this is possible because they scaled up very fast, and I think it was a good model for us to see. But honestly, we thought they have a particular part that they are addressing, and I think they were mainly trying to focus on companies who know what they want to do, and they were looking at skill augmentation kind of a thing, and they scaled that up very well initially, and that helped them scale. But then we were also realizing there are other plays, like a lot of what we did was more solving problems, and seeing a company is not able to, and they had an option. Honestly, it was not only Musicma, but even a consulting company, IT company, others people. By the time we came into the picture, there were quite a few options because this space has no entry barrier, and the bigger players were also do. So initially, I think our focus had been, try to solve problems, see if you can productize some of it. What is the role of technology? So we found our niche in this huge space, and in some form the means to end is different a little bit. The end is similar for all these companies, but the approach, given this a fairly large pie, and today also, I think honestly is just building up. So that was the focus. Yes, there are players, but still, if your approach is a little different, you could get in. So that had been the thinking, and we kind of found a good response to that. A slightly harder business to build on, but built up pretty nicely again.
Just help me understand how was your approach different? Like if you had to, like, say, make a graph and plot the companies in it, like where would you be in that graph? What would be the axis of it, like as compared to, say, a Mu Sigma or companies like Infosys, and which are also offering analytics as a service? So
Yeah. So it is really the approach in some form, and how you look at it. I think Mu Sigma, a lot of the initial market they got helped, kind of, or even a lot of the more boutique analytics companies were trying to do was to take on a lot of the analytics outsourcing kind of work initially, because a lot of companies were knew what they want to do. They were scaling it up, and they looked at who could bring scale. And I think some of these companies were getting established. They were doing it.
okay, so these companies which just looking for an implementation partner, like they already had clarity.
Yeah, I think, see, the skill is not an easy thing also, because in some form you might say statistician, huh? But yes, someone might have a degree in statistics, but that does not mean they can also immediately start solving, say, a card modeling, what we initially talked about. So I think in some form, Musigma's approach had been create a university, bring a lot of these skills and drive it. But we still saw there was a gap on, this was still not solving the problem. This was more like, these companies are already know what the solution is. They needed skill. Our view
So
was,
this was like a cost arbitrage also in a
yeah,
way,
in
like.
some form, that was initially also scale, and by the time we came in, that game was a little crowded also, because the IT players, to your point, were also coming in, and they were well entrenched with IT organizations. But we were also seeing a lot of the decision makers are not necessarily at that time IT. This was like a marketing head or a sales head, and they did not know analytics, and their whole approach was, I need to solve problems. I don't know what analytics is inside, but I think this is an analytics problem. So we took that route, saying, we'll work with the business heads, and try to initially show them what can be done, and then come in, and that was our approach. So it was more, initially was more projects and smaller programs rather than outsourcing kind of a focus. But I think what that helped us, and I think not that we thought all of this, but what it helped us in this path, we saw a lot of commonality on how you solve these problems. So there's a lot of reusability of what I would call technology, so which gave us a kind of a platform on not starting from scratch every point of time. So our approach was gradually became more asset based consulting. So it's still consulting, but don't start from scratch. Reuse a lot of your assets or solutions, and structure it for companies who are still figuring out. Because although I might say a company A might have solved it for marketing, but they have still not solved it for sales or supply chain and others. So the ability to go to them and say, we will structure this, we'll also bring in our platform, has been our differentiation, as compared to, say, the space in some form has outsourcing players. Space is in some form also have consulting players whose approach is more, we'll just go with the blueprint of the business design, but those consulting players may not get their hands dirty on actually solving the problem. They will just do a blueprint. So there we come in. The IT players are mostly into the, from the data side they go in. So they are working with the tech organization, but still there is a gap between the tech and the business, which so there is a fairly large space which is unaddressed, which is where our approach is to kind of attack through that space. So we call it more, more technology readiness, not really a pure product, but almost a platform play, but then wrap it with consulting to work with those people who are trying to solve. And today, honestly, if you see this space, I don't think it's any more about analytics over the last 3 4 years. It is becoming more a digital space. So in some form, you and I all are today very different on what we expect from companies after using a Uber or a Facebook app or a Amazon. So we all expect every company today will give us similar experience as customers, which is very digital in nature. So and all businesses are also becoming digital, given technology is also evolving. But fundamentally, all these digital models are kind of incomplete without the role of analytics, because they all generate a humongous amount of data. And if you don't use that data to almost have automated decisioning, making recommendations, being able to converse with someone, uh, finding out issues. So that I think has become really an automated, what I call artificial intelligence is the new play. So we are increasingly, I think we are not just about analytics. Analytics is a mean, but we are more fitting into digital transformation, and our play is more AI. So that's really how we are evolving, and how, and so yes, is analytics embedded, but what customers buy from us is more in their digital transformation journey. How do AI fit in? So how do you make AI real in enterprises is really what we are trying to drive now.
Okay. Okay. So typically, like, you are solving a business problem for a customer. Like, a client might tell you that, how do I increase sales of so and so product, or how do I optimize my product portfolio, and you would use analytics and AI tools to give them an answer to that question.
Yeah, and the color of that, what would have changed over the last 5 6 years is visualize FMCG company, say a consumer packaged goods company, who now have to drastically change their model, say after COVID, where the sales is not necessarily happening in the store. Hmm. And in some form is more direct to consumer. You have a lot more leverage of, say, IoT devices. So a lot is getting sold on Amazon, or some of them have their own .com. So they are saying, I'm going through this digital transformation and I'm generating a humongous amount of data. So can I then change my game using this data, and maybe the decisioning based on this data in an automatic way, which is AI, and I need a partner to make that happen. So I'm adopting a new digital model, but I don't know how AI fits in. So can you guys come in and fit in AI? Is really the whole thing that we are chasing in some form. A lot of our business has become more digital enablement based on AI.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay, got it. Okay, so how has the growth been like? Like, what kind of revenue did you do in the first year, and then how did it progress after that?
So first year, as I was saying, first year is not our normal year, but being again a services or a solutions business, I think you can again see growth coming. I think the second or third year probably we're kind of setting a baseline, and in some form, I think every year we have grown. I think we were, I think Deloitte's first 50 in India for several years. So I think every year we had seen a significant amount of growth. Although there was initial days, there was still a question mark as you were talking with the competition. What is the sweet spot? Is it like another company who's just solving problems? But I think over the last 3 4 years, with the fitting into the whole AI to digital transformation charter, I think we are seeing a significant shift, and I think the space also is going to be more around that, because you enterprises don't have a choice; they will become more and more digital, and obviously there's no entry barrier. Different companies will play, but now we are fairly well established also that you need a specialized partner to do this, being able to drive it. So I think we typically would see a us 50 to 80% growth every year, is the kind of growth we would see. And I think that, so we are not like a software company who will see a overnight 1,000% growth one year and others. So it's more about selling it in enterprises, and more execution, and making that happen. So typically every year we have seen around a 40 50% growth on an average, is how we have seen growth.
What about your headcount? Something to give an idea of the scale.
Yeah, that I can tell you. So we are more than 650 people or so. We operate out of 5 countries, 13 cities right now. Although I think Bangalore, where I'm sitting and talking right now, is the headquarters. So again, I'm the only person sitting in the 60,000 square feet right now. But that's the standard office where we do most of the heavy lifting from here. But then we are present close to Again, geographies where we work on. Our largest market is US, where we today work on, focused on a few industries. Most of our clients are Fortune 500 or so, because we focus on larger clients or very data rich companies. So those are again some indications in terms of what's kind of building up here.
Okay, okay. So you took external funding in 2016. So what was the rationale for that? Like,
Yeah, so being in this space in some form, you would see we are a profitable company. From other than the first 6 months or so, we have always been profitable, so you can fund quite a bit of your own growth. But having said that, I think there are two fronts where you look at external capital. One is to see how you probably take some risk, and I think that was also the thinking initially. A few things which are working, how do we go a little bit more bullish there, not try to get everything and say in 12 months I need profitability back into every investment I'm making. So having a little bit of a war chest there to play on, which is one rationale. Other, I think in some form, given we work with large enterprises and others, a little bit of this is also some backing and some balance sheet strengthening, which becomes a part of the game, which has been the rationale where we did one round, we'll do more, has been the thinking. But it's not necessarily, it's not really a, we have been a fairly capital efficient growth kind of company, probably one of the most efficient companies to kind of drive growth still. Having said that, I think obviously now that was the initial round, and the thinking would be also similar as we go forward, to be more bullish and to strengthen the balance sheet further on larger deals and others would be the two reasons to look at external capital.
okay, okay. So are you a pure services company, or do you also have some products that you sell off the shelf to clients?
Yeah, so we don't sell off the shelf products. So we are not into a SaaS kind of product. But any engagement we get in, we also have certain amount of not starting from scratch every time. So we call them our accelerators, which allows us to reimagine what can be done for the client and give a head start. So assume that's like a platform. We don't sell that platform standalone, but we build on that platform and customize. So, in that sense, there is a technology play, but not a pure off the shelf product. Because mostly the large enterprises that we cater to, they need a lot of customization, because most of the businesses, if you see, they would have some options of the stack and would have invested. But the bigger game is to work with them and really realize value from it. So if you bring something that is very valuable, to get a head start and reduce the time to value. But on the other hand, I think most cases pure products many of the times don't scale, which is which is the market we are trying to address again.
Okay, okay. And what has been the change of business or change of your approach due to COVID? Like, have you changed the way you operate, or has the revenue mix changed, or how has that impacted you?
Yes, so COVID has been interesting. I think when it started off, we were also nervous, like anyone else, and we also wanted to be cautious, to be honest. But I think two things happened. One is the exposure. If you see the kind of industries which got impacted in a large way, our exposure there was low. Touch wood, we don't do much of hospitality, travel, and others. So that way, we were lucky in the industries we are into, like consumer packaged goods, high tech, manufacturing, financial services. It was not a very direct thing. So it is a little bit of an indirect thing that we go through. But as we do this, I think through the process, one thing we realize, honestly, the kind of conversations pipeline has significantly gone up. Although we were very nervous, how can I close a deal without travel? But now it's still, I think a lot is happening today, where enterprises, the whole adoption of digital has become much bigger, and that's probably the only silver lining for this whole pandemic, because every enterprise is now in has fast forwarded the digital transformation thinking, and I think AI is something which fits very well in most of them. So I think for us, I think eventually again there's a little bit of a shock, although we are doing pretty well. Even this year is going to be a growth year for us. Having said that, it's a little lower than our normal, but on the other hand, we see a next year or the following year will probably be even bigger, because a lot more companies are adopting it in terms of what they are trying to change the way they operate. And it's very inherent. Any of those will be very AI driven as they're adopting digital channels.
Hmm. Are Indian companies also coming to you, or bulk of your businesses?
No, yeah, so bulk of our business at one time 100% was US, but over the last 3 4 years we are actually doing quite a bit of India, although we don't proactively reach out in India. We have been reacting, and I think India somewhere the brand has also been building up given we are here. So we now work with quite a few companies in India who are pretty serious in this space. I think a lot of them are trying to almost get to the whole digital, given the whole fintech, the whole a lot of other areas. The whole technology adoption is big in India right now. So a lot of companies, there's also realization. Some of them think, इसमें क्या है मैं भी बना लूंगा, I'll just hire the same people. That mindset is also there partly, but a lot on the CXO level, especially large business houses and others, are very serious about it now. And we partner with quite a few enterprises in India also as they are going through this journey. So I think India is going to be a pretty interesting market in the next 4 5 years.
Hmm. Okay. And how about the way you do business? Are you, for example, now looking at making remote working long term permanent, or do you feel that it's better to have people in office? Has your view changed on that because of the COVID?
So we still haven't. I think initially we were very skeptical whether this model will work, and but when it started off, I think we are lucky that this can be done from any location. Honestly, you don't have to really come together do it. So still over the last few months, I think we are working pretty well. Everyone is working from home. In fact, our team is so scattered in around India right now. Getting them back into the office, and if you want to do it next month, it will not happen overnight. It will require some planning and others. But having said that, I think some things cannot still be done in this environment. I'll give an example. We had almost 100 campus guys joined us over the last 6 months or so. Getting them to touch and feel who we are, what we do. I think remotely you can do so much, but then some amount of there's still a gap which requires thinking. Some very complex projects. I think you always feel, can I get together as a team drive? Then also, I think closing certain deals. See, it's a trust game at the end of the day. Whatever we do, people to virtually trust someone that they can help when you are not yet a very established brand. Those things are still are things we miss probably, but in general our work can happen. So currently I don't think we'll go back to exactly the same model where we will have everyone back in office, but on the other hand we also believe that we don't want to, a lot of people we are seeing are reducing office space and others, we don't want to do that, because we think this is also critical, but maybe we won't expand in the same rate at which we would have thought we would do in the past. So that's our current thinking right now. And I see again, I think we're not in a big hurry, but some employees want to come back, so we are opening slowly that up. But we are not making it compulsory right now. We don't know, in the next 3 to 6 months we'll decide but we are able to work, so which I think we are very
Hmm,
fortunate.
hmm, hmm, Got it. Okay. Okay. So there are three co-founders at BRIDGEi2i. So how did you navigate that relationship? How did you decide who will be CEO? What is the split of role between the three? And what are tips for successful co-founder relationship?
Wow. This is really going back on the memory lane to pick up a few things. But I think it's good. I think the point you asked and the fact that I'm thinking before I answering, is that that's not the biggest concern from us. So things have in some form touchwood worked out very well between three of us. But having said that, I think, see, the positive, in some form we knew each other in the past, and in some form we have respect for each other. because of certain things we do, and we're very different from each other. We have similarities, but also very different in terms of what we do, which was the basic premise. I think if you ask me, the one thing I would take credit of is to think of that initial team and kind of think who could play what role. So in some form, I think Ms. Pritham, for example, is a gold medalist from ISI. He is reputed in the industry on solving complex problem, a great teacher for people to learn. Ashish, on the other hand, is a person who throw him into a situation which you are kind of driving. In some form, he will fix it. So he's a fixer. So in some form, Ashish focuses on lot on the operation side, making everything in place, the functions. He has a very solid finance acumen. Pritham, on the other hand, focus on our technology, innovation, building that up. I think in some form, my focus had been more on the front end and building that up because, again, not that I have done that in exactly the same. I was never a sales guy, but ended up being the whole face and thinking about how to build business, both marketing and we're also very marketing focused as we along with sales. So that's where my focus had been. So I think so. Some of those, I think initially, actually, we spent. I remember the first month or 2 months, we actually did a very documented agreement. I think we call it the founders agreement or something. And sometimes we thought, why are we doing this? But I think that was very useful. Honestly, we never opened it up later. But I think the best practice to do in whoever you are coming in, because it's good to put down on paper what you think. And that was also our thinking on sitting down and saying, who could play what role, what could be the thinking on ownership, who should. So those were all where we spend actually quite a bit of time, and maybe in some form, having worked on large enterprises and others helped us think through it. But I think it's a very crucial part. And then it went into a lock and key, and I don't know where the document is today. But I think it's very useful. And having said that, that helped. But I think initial days coming together in this setup means you can be a CEO, you can, but you're working together. I think the ability to work together is not an easy one. I think the first 1 year, I think we also learned a lot more about each other in terms of strength and the ability to create a space for each other, and just give it is a very important aspect in this game. Because so that also we did. I think we did a lot by learning. I think there have been situations we have fought like crazy. And I think it is very healthy because the more you open up rather than holding it yourself, which no one knows why is it. I think it's a very healthy thing. I would suggest everyone be very open. If you don't believe in something, articulate, come to agreement. It's a little bit of a husband-wife relationship in some form. You're coming together for years to do, and you don't have an option to step out of it, because the moment also you open that option, you can step out, then you are gone in my view. So I those are probably a few guidance in my view on what we worked, which helped. I think that's one thing which has worked very well. I think the founding team has been intact, and today also. But I think we come across. We would again fight in front of other people as need be, which is a part of our culture. But again, I think we'll agree. Finally, we will decide on something, and we will then come together and drive. And I think the variation of people is very important. If you are all very same people, interesting, we all come from the same institute, but we are very different people. Is the second aspect, and I think having the trust with each other will be the third aspect. I think which I think we had because of working together in the past, which is also very important.
How did you navigate the equity split between the three of you? Like, did you have it like a three-way equal split, or because you initiated the idea, was there like a difference? Or
Yeah, I think it's again something we actually spent quite a bit of time. It hadn't been exactly equal because means there are components of what we what experience or what we bring to the table. So we had some thoughts on that a little bit. And also, obviously, in India, I think capital plays a role. So, in terms of, we also had varied contribution in terms of capital. It was not exactly the same. So that way we came together and agreed more or less. But it was not purely capital, because that doesn't help in some form. So I think those were the two things we actually spent time, laid it down at that point of time, and which I think was good to actually structure it right then and there.
Okay. So, this is my last question to you, and it's somewhat unrelated to your own journey. But you have worked with technology giants like GE and HP, who are now, a shadow of what they used to be. And what made that happen? Why did they lose their way? And what do you do to make sure that you remain relevant even 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line?
Yeah, very interesting one. And I think, uh, again, yes, I think the kind of learnings I had with GE and HP had been tremendous. I think I have my own a significant respect for what has been created over a long period of time. And it's really unfortunate to see some of them in the direction it has gone. And I think in some form, it's also there are ups and downs in an industry based on also, I think, in terms of there is a condition on certain things, but then also certain choices of businesses and others which can go right or wrong. Although the foundations, if you see in some form, it's not that they will vanish. I mean, the foundations are so strong, they will continue in some form, but they haven't necessarily done in the same light. And I think one big part I would say is being relevant with time, and I think that's a big part. And both G and HP at point of time, innovation has been the core to those companies, and in some form, the whole space, how it's changing, a lot of companies start coming in where they bring in something so innovative. But again, and I've seen a little bit in HP, for example. I have been an early user of what I would call the smartphone. They had a device called iPack at one point of time, which they were one of the early guys to think about it. But somehow that whole space, Apple and others probably just took off and did, and HP could not kind of play on it, and in some form that's today a very different market. As when you think technology, you start thinking some of this as new tech versus old tech. So I think the ability to continue on innovation, being relevant at the right time, being able to capture it. So obviously a lot of companies who have been there has his own barriers created to be able to do it. When you become very large, yes, you will stay on, but your ability to do innovation becomes a little bit of an issue because it's a ship which is going in a way. Changing the steering the ship a little differently is so difficult, while a smaller company or newer company probably can steer much more efficiently. So I think that probably is one thing. I think in some form we see sunrise, we see again sunset and others, but I think that probably is the most important aspect. How relevant have you been with time, and are you being able to you have a lot more capital or brand to back it up, but there are others who will come in who will still break. I think COVID, for example, I think a lot of this kind of crisis actually fuels a lot more innovation, which sometimes large giants just miss it, where smaller companies will just come and do a lot more as compared to bigger players. So that, in my view, I think means I would not generalize on it. I would say I think everyone has ups and downs. I do have respect for them, what they have done and built over time, centuries in some cases. But being able to stay relevant is probably the most important thing, which sometimes becomes a need for some of these larger companies.
From an assignment they got through a known client to having clients all across the globe, BRIDGEi2i has truly experienced quite the journey. To know more about the services they offer, visit www.bridgei2i.com. That's BRIDGEi numeric 2 i.com.
Beyond Campus is a production of the Podium.in, powered by Career Launcher. If you like this show, then we are sure that you will love our other shows on subjects like entrepreneurship, marketing, books, and drama. Check out the Podium.in for a complete list of all our shows.